They took my house keys from me today. My own son, David, did it. He stood right there in the doorway of my kitchen, holding a court order and looking past me. Behind him were two men in matching polo shirts from some place called Silver Haven Convalescent Home. The paper he showed me said I was a danger to myself. It claimed I'd left the stove on, not once, but repeatedly. I never leave the stove on. David's eyes were flat and dull, the colour of old dishwater. He said it was for my own good, that the big family house was just too much for me now, and that they'd already sold it to cover what he called my future care costs. I didn't believe him for a second. I saw the real truth in the tight, pinched line of his wife's mouth, standing right behind him in the hall. They didn't just think the house was too much. They needed the money. My money. From my life's work. The van they put me in had no interior door handles. I felt like a parcel being delivered. The lobby at Silver Haven was too bright, with fluorescent lights, and it smelled powerfully of industrial cleaner and overcooked cabbage. A nurse named Marge, her name tag, shiny and new, took everything. She confiscated my purse, she slipped my late husband Henry's wedding band right off my finger, and she took my personal cell phone. She called it all asset safeguarding. Then they led me down a long, pale green hallway to room 12B. It held a single narrow bed, a small window with bars on it that just looked out onto a brick wall, and a little red call button on a cord that I had a feeling nobody ever really answered. I knew right then I needed to get out. Not just out of this room, but out of this whole legally binding nightmare. Everything I'd built and saved over my 76 years was suddenly on the line. The real pressure came at dinner time in the common dining room. A different aide, a big, bulky man who told me his name was Troy, crushed a sedative pill into my applesauce. When I refused to eat it, he got angry. He held my nose closed with his thick fingers until I had no choice but to swallow. The world soon went soft, blurry, and distant. As he wheeled my chair back to my room, I let my hand trail lightly against the wall. My fingers, still clever, caught on a rough, loose edge of the vinyl baseboard. Later, when Troy was finally gone and the door was shut, I slowly knelt down beside that wall. My old knees popped in protest. I worked my fingers under the loose strip and pried it up a little. There, nestled in a layer of dust and old mouse droppings, was a single tarnished key. It was small, the kind for a filing cabinet or a locker. It was not a key to any outside door. It was not a key to freedom itself, but it was a key to something. I palmed it, feeling the metal go cold against my skin. The sedative pulled heavily at my thoughts, but I fought against the fog. This was no accident. Someone else had hidden this here before me. Someone else had been trapped in this very room, too. I carefully slipped the key deep into the seam of my thin mattress. A direct escape was clearly off the table for now. First, I needed to find out what this little key opened. And then, even more important, I needed to find out who put my own children up to this terrible scheme. Because my David, bless him, isn't smart enough to orchestrate a full conservatorship all by himself. He's just the greedy foot soldier. I know it in my bones. The real villain, the one pulling the strings, has a proper office somewhere. The key burned a hole in my mind all night. Every shuffle in the hall, every moan from a neighbouring room, felt like a step closer to its discovery. Morning came with a blistering headache from the sedative. Breakfast was cold oatmeal. I ate it slowly, watching. The staff moved with a bored, brutal efficiency. Marge dispensed pills. Troy lifted residents like sacks of flour. Now I needed to find the lock. I had to move. They had activities in the common room at 10. I let the aide wheel me in, positioning my chair near the door. A television blared game shows. Most residents stared, vacant. A few, like me, watched the staff. I saw a pattern. Every 30 minutes, Troy or Marge would disappear down the west hallway, past the staff-only door. They never came back with coffee or supplies. They just went and returned a few minutes later. My curiosity cost me at 11. "Time for your assessment, Eleanor," Marge chirped. She took me to a small, windowless room. A man in a cheap suit introduced himself as Dr. Evans, here to evaluate my cognitive decline. He asked me the date, the president, to count backward. I played the confused old woman, mixing up answers, letting my eyes drift. It was humiliating. The threat was his pen, ticking boxes that would cement me here forever. He finished and left me with Marge. As she transferred me from the chair to my wheelchair, her keyring fell from her belt, clattering under the desk. She cursed, bending to retrieve it. My eyes locked on one key. It was brass, newer than mine, but the same distinctive, old-fashioned shape. A locker key. When she stood, I let my hand tremble violently, pointing at nothing. "Spider! A huge one!" She jerked back, looking. It bought me 2 seconds. I nudged my wheelchair wheel over the spot where her keys had fallen. A faint, gritty scrape confirmed it. She found no spider and scowled, wheeling me out roughly. Back in the common room, I pretended to doze. The lock was here, in this building. A locker bank. For staff. They were stealing from us, using the lockers to stash what they took before taking it home. My hidden key was a spare. Maybe a disgruntled employee's insurance. I realized the theft wasn't just my family's. It was systemic. This place was a harvesting operation. And as Marge passed, she patted my shoulder. Her fingers dipped into the collar of my dress, checking for a necklace they'd missed. Her hand was cold. I didn't flinch. I just stored the violation away. The game wasn't escape anymore. It was exposure. And I needed proof. The lockers were in the west hallway. I just had to get past a door that required a key card, the one dangling from Marge's belt. Getting the key card meant getting Marge to take it off. She wore it on a retractable reel clipped to her scrub top. It never left her body. I spent 2 days mapping routines. Medication cart at 9 a.m., bathroom assists at 10, lunch lineup at noon. Her weakest point was the medication cart. She had to unlock it, turn her back to count pills, then relock it. A 3-minute window of distraction. I needed an accomplice. The only candidate was Mr. Finn in room 15. He had Parkinson's, but his eyes were sharp. He'd been a lawyer. They'd taken his books. Yesterday, I'd whispered to him during bingo, "They're stealing your war medals." He'd stared at me, then given the slightest nod. Allying with him was a risk. If he faltered, we'd both get the heavy sedatives, maybe worse. Troy was the problem. He shadowed Marge, a menacing presence. Today he was glued to her, laughing at something on his phone. My plan seemed impossible. At 9:05 a.m., Marge rolled her cart into the common room, right on schedule. She began calling names. I waited. When she called Finity Arthur and turned to his blister pack, I caught Mr. Finn's eye. He gave a tiny cough, then a louder one. He began to gasp, clutching his chest. His acting was convincing. Marge hurried over. "Arthur? Arthur!" Troy lumbered forward. This was it. As Marge bent over Mr. Finn, her keycard reel extended. I was in my wheelchair, positioned just behind the cart. My hand, hidden by a draped blanket, shot out. I didn't grab the card. I slipped the small, sharp sewing scissors I'd stolen from the crafts room into the reel's nylon cord and snipped. The card, still attached to the clipped end, dropped silently into the blanket on my lap. I stuffed it into my sleeve. Marge straightened up. Mr. Finn was recovering. She turned back to the cart, oblivious. But the reel dangled, cut. She'd notice the weight difference soon. I wheeled myself toward the west hallway. The staff-only door was 30 feet away. My heart hammered. Behind me, I heard Marge's voice, sharp. "Hey, where's my—" I didn't look back. I swiped the card. The green light flashed. I pushed through. The door clicked shut. I was in a stark, concrete corridor, and facing me was a wall of 24 grey metal lockers. My key felt hot in my palm. But from the common room, I heard a rising commotion, and then the distinct sound of the door handle being tried. It was locked from this side, but they had master keycards. I had seconds. I ran to locker 17. My key slid in. It turned. The locker door opened with a groan. Inside were neat labelled files. I saw my name. Vandermeer, Eleanor. I grabbed it with clumsy fingers. A keycard reader beeped from the corridor. They were coming. I shoved the file down the back of my dress, under my sweater, and yanked the key out. No time to relock it. I wheeled away as the door swung open. Marge and Troy stood there. Marge looked furious. "Lost, Grandma." Troy sneered. I pointed a shaky finger past them. "He went that way. A man took my blanket." I made my voice quaver with fear. Marge glanced at the open locker, then at me. A senile old woman? Or a thief? She stormed over, saw it empty, and swore. "Check her," she told Troy. He came closer. The file was a hard rectangle against my spine. If he patted me down, it was over. I let out a real wail of terror. "Don't let him touch me. He hurts people." I thrashed in my chair. My cry made him hesitate. In that moment, the fire alarm went off. A deafening shriek filled the hall, and then the sprinklers came on, drenching us in cold, smelly water. Chaos took over. Through the water, I saw Mr. Finn, slumped by the common room door, his hand just off the red alarm pull. He met my eyes with a weak, triumphant smirk before his head dropped. He'd made my diversion. Marge and Troy were shouting. "Forget her! Get the lockers!" Marge screamed. Troy shot me a furious look, but started helping her. It was my chance. I wheeled through the common room door into a stream of confused residents and aides. In the pandemonium, I turned into a deserted linen closet and shut the door. It was dark and smelled of bleach. My hands shook as I pulled out the wet file. I couldn't read it there, but I could feel. I peeled it open. There were official forms, but paper-clipped behind them were photos. I felt the glossy finish. In the light under the door, I tilted one. It was a picture of my house. Standing on my porch, shaking hands with my son David, was a man in an expensive coat. Dr. Alistair Vance, the name on the Silver Haven papers. So my son didn't betray me. He was a pawn. Vance was the spider. Paper-clipped behind the photo was a typewritten line. Subject's late husband's marine pension fund, $285,000. Vehicle for transfer, contested will, status, pending. They weren't just selling my house. They were erasing my whole life to fund this place. Then the alarm stopped. The silence was worse than the siren. They'd be doing head counts. They'd find me missing. And they'd know I wasn't just confused. I had their evidence, and they had a building on lockdown. The silence after the alarm felt heavy. I heard shouted orders. "Find 12B. My room. The linen closet was a coffin. I had to move. The file was soaked. I ripped the top page and the photo free, folded them tight, and tucked them into my sock. The rest I shoved behind some sheets. I needed the administrative office. If Vance was here, his own files were the key. But I was dripping wet, leaving a trail. Every staff member was searching. They'd secure the perimeter and sweep every inch. I cracked the closet door. The hall was empty and wet. The office was east, past the nurse's station. I wheeled out fast, wheels squeaking. I turned a corner and froze. The station was empty. But down the hall were two men, Dr. Evans and the silver-haired man from the photo, Vance. They talked urgently outside an office. Vance looked furious. Evans nodded fast. I ducked into an empty patient room. I heard Vance's cold voice. The Finity patient. Accelerate his DNR. Find the Vandermeer woman. She doesn't get another pill. She gets a permanent transfer to the secure ward. My blood went cold. A permanent transfer meant a padded room until you died. Mr. Finn had signed his death warrant by helping me. Their footsteps faded. I looked out. Vance's office door was shut, but not latched. This was my only chance. I rolled to it, pushed it open, and slipped in. It was a quiet, plush room of dark wood. I went to the filing cabinet. Locked. The desk drawers. Locked. My eyes scanned the room. I saw a hollowed-out book on a shelf titled Tax Codes 1985. A cliché. I pulled it. Inside was a small black ledger and a USB drive. I took both. As I turned, the door opened. A young, scared-looking aide stood there with a mop. We stared. She saw me dripping, the ledger in my hand. Her tag said, "Lena? Please," I whispered. "He's killing people." Her eyes widened. She looked into the hall, then back at me. Conflict raged on her face. She stepped in and closed the door. "They're checking every room next," she breathed. "There's a service elevator at the end of the hall. It goes to the basement laundry. There's a loading dock door. The code is the year this place opened. 1998. She pointed to a floor vent. "Give me the book. I'll say I found it after the leak. Go. Now." I didn't hesitate. I shoved the ledger and USB into her hands. Keeping my sock papers, I wheeled out. The hall was clear. I saw the service elevator. I pressed the button. A shout came from around the corner. "You! Stop!" It was Troy. The doors slid open. I rolled in and hit B. The doors began to close. Troy ran up, shoving his arm in. They bounced open. He reached for me. I did the only thing I could. I swung my heavy metal water pitcher, which I'd hidden under my blanket earlier, at his knee. It connected with a sickening crack. He howled and recoiled. The doors shut. The elevator descended. I heard his furious scream into his radio. "Basement! She's in the service elevator!" They were waiting when the doors opened, with handcuffs. Vance stood there, icy calm. He held up the small black ledger. "Looking for this, Eleanor?" Lena stood behind him, eyes on the floor. The betrayal was so complete it stole my breath. The quiet helper was the deepest trap. Vance smiled. "Let's discuss your permanent transfer." The handcuffs were cold and tight. Troy pushed my wheelchair, limping, his angry breath hot on my ear. "You're done," he hissed. Vance walked ahead with the ledger. We went deeper into the basement, through a heavy door marked Secured Care. The air was cold and smelled bad. The walls were padded with ugly green vinyl. They wheeled me into a small room with a plastic bed that had restraints and a drain in the floor. I was terrified. Vance spoke calmly. "Eleanor, you're a risk. This is for your protection." I thought, don't let them strap me down. If they did, I'd never get up. "Where's my son?" I demanded. "I want my lawyer." "Your son signed the papers," Vance said with a thin smile. "You have no lawyer. We manage everything now." Troy grabbed my arm to move me. I went completely limp. It surprised him. "Help me." He snapped at a big orderly who came in. As they fought to put me on the cold bed, my hand brushed the mattress seam. Something hard was sewn inside. I pressed my fingers there while they tried to secure my wrists. Thrashing, I ripped the seam with my thumbnail. My fingers closed around a smooth metal pen. They got the first leather cuff on my right wrist. As they reached for my left, I hid the pen in my fist. "Wait," I cried, letting tears fall. "I need the bathroom. Please, I'm scared." "After sedation," Vance said. Troy brought out a syringe. This was it. The orderly leaned in to strap my other arm. I drove the pen straight down into his thigh. He screamed and stumbled back. Troy dropped the syringe. Vance shouted. In the chaos, I worked the pen into the keyhole of my wrist restraint. I remembered Henry doing this once. I jiggled it. Click. It opened. I rolled off the bed onto the floor. My knees hurt, but I scrambled. Vance moved to block the door. I didn't go there. I went to the floor drain. I pried the grate up with the pen. It was a filthy chute. As Troy grabbed my shoulders, I dropped the pen in. I heard a faint splash far below. Then I went limp again. They restrained me fully this time. The needle went into my arm. The world got foggy. As Vance leaned over my blurry face, I whispered, "The police will find the ledger. Lena can't be trusted." It was a bluff. His smug look flickered. The last thing I saw was him marching out, barking into his phone. They thought they had silenced me, but I'd sent a message into the darkness. And where there's a drain, there might be a way. The drugs knocked me out for who knows how long. I woke up in another padded room, but this one had a cot. A little light came from a high window. I was alone. I ached all over, and my mouth was dry, but my head was clear. One thought was bright in my mind: the drain. It was my only link to the outside. Using it would take everything I had, and if I was caught, they'd put me in solitary. They slid water and mush through a slot. No utensils. The orderly watched me eat with a blank face. The tray was flimsy plastic, useless, but the drain grate looked just like the one from before, only smaller. I needed a tool. At medication time, a stern nurse gave me a pill. I faked swallowing it, hiding it under my tongue. After she left, I spat it out. It was a strong antipsychotic. I flushed it. I couldn't let them drug me into a stupor. I needed my wits. Hours dragged. I listened to the building's sounds. Pipes groaned. At night, I heard a soft tapping from the wall. Morse code. I tapped back with my nail. 2 taps for yes. I asked, "Friend?" 2 taps came back. My heart jumped. Could it be Mr. Finn? The tapping spelled out DRAIN. They knew. The next morning, I peeled a long, stiff strip of plastic from the edge of my old mattress. It was sharp. When the orderly came, I spilled my water. As he bent to wipe it up, I palmed the plastic strip. He didn't see. That night, I worked on the drain grate. The plastic was strong enough to pry the old, rusted screws. One finally loosened with a loud screech. I froze. No one came. My fingers bled working on the second screw. Finally, the grate lifted. The hole was narrow and dropped into darkness. I felt a draft. Air meant it went somewhere. I had to test it. I had nothing to send down. Then I remembered the photo and papers in my sock. I couldn't risk my only evidence. Instead, I tore a strip from my sheet. I used a bit of blood from my finger to write 12B help. I wrapped it around the plastic strip and dropped it into the hole. A few seconds later, I heard a faint splash. Water. It likely went to a main drain. If my ally was listening, they might find it. I was putting the grate back when a key turned in the lock. The night orderly did a check. His flashlight beam swept the room. He saw me sleeping and left. But as the light passed over the floor, it paused on the drain. One of the screws was missing. I'd dropped it in my hurry. It lay shining 2 feet away. He hadn't spotted it this time, but on his next round, he would. I had until dawn to fix it, or be found out. The missing screw was a disaster. I stayed still until the orderly's footsteps faded and the lock clicked. Then I crawled for it. My hands shook as I pushed the screw back into the drain grate. It held, but the grate sat crooked and wobbled. I needed a shim. I remembered the paper cup from my pill in the trash. I tore a piece, folded it into a wedge, and shoved it under the grate. The wobble stopped. It looked solid. Morning came. The orderly brought breakfast, never glancing down. The waiting was terrible. Every noise made me jump. I had to hope my message in the drain was found. At midday, Vance visited. He stood outside my window with the intercom on. "Your son is here, Eleanor. He's worried about you." He motioned, and David appeared. My boy looked pale, avoiding my eyes. Vance said, "David agrees the secure ward is best. He's authorizing stronger treatment." David gave a single, stiff nod. It felt like a punch. Vance had turned my own son into a prop to break me. After they left, I felt numb. Then, a faint scrape came from the drain. I knelt and pulled up a wet piece of paper, a laundry tag fragment. In shaky writing, it said, "Pipe leads to laundry. Truck 5 a.m. Finn." So Mr. Finn was alive. The laundry was my way out. But 5 a.m. was during shift change, and a truck meant the loading dock. Everything changed at the next pill check. The nurse watched me swallow. I felt the pill go down. Dread hit. Soon, a heavy tiredness crept in. I fought it, pacing and slapping my face, but my thoughts got fuzzy. I was struggling to stay awake. As it got dark, I was barely conscious. The lock turned. It was Lena, the aide who betrayed me. She came in alone, her face tense. She held out my metal pen from the drain. "I fished it out," she whispered. "I'm sorry. They have my sister in the dementia wing. They threatened her." She looked at the drain, then at me. "That truck tomorrow is for medical waste. It goes to the incinerator. It's a trap. Vance knows you'll try to run." She pressed the pen into my hand and left, locking the door. The sedation pulled me under. I clutched the pen, a cold piece of truth. My helper was forced. My escape was a death sentence. The clock was ticking toward 5 a.m. The sedative wore off around 3 a.m. I had 2 hours. Lena said the truck was a trap, but it was the only exit I knew. I wasn't trying to escape anymore, just survive. I couldn't get on that truck. I had the pen, and I knew about the drain pipe to the laundry. It was a hiding place until the truck left. But pipes are narrow, and I'm an old woman. I drank water, trying to get sharp. I listened at the door, then worked on the drain grate with the pen. I got the screw and wedge out. The hole was dark and small. I wasn't sure I'd fit. Then, a key in the lock. I froze. Troy came in, his knee bandaged, carrying a bundled sheet. "Time for your transfer," he said. He didn't see the open drain right away. He came toward me. I had seconds. I didn't retreat. I charged him, aiming for his bad knee. He yelled and stumbled. The sheet fell, showing a straitjacket. I grabbed the sheet and threw it over his head. As he flailed, I ducked past him and ran into the empty hall. I saw the stairwell door and pushed through. I went down the concrete stairs. The air got colder. I reached a sub-basement with a sign for the boiler room. The door was unlocked. I went in. The room was huge, roaring with furnaces and pipes. It was hot and steamy. A figure sat at a desk watching a small TV, an elderly maintenance man. He hadn't heard me. I needed to stop him without hurting him. I crept closer, but kicked a loose pipe fitting. It clanged. The man turned. It was Mr. Finn. He stared, then put a finger to his lips and waved me over. He shouted over the noise. "They think I'm fixing a leak. I've been waiting. The truck is a trap. Vance has guards at the dock. But there's another way. The incinerator chute from the medical wing feeds into a waste bin here. They empty it at 4:30. You can hide in the bin after it's emptied." It was reckless, but I was out of time. It was already 4:10. We went to a large wheeled bin lined with plastic. It smelled terrible. He helped me empty it. "Get in," he said. "I'll wheel you to the compactor room. From there, a corridor leads to an old coal tunnel. It comes out near the fence." I climbed in. He put some clean bags on top of me. "When the cart stops, count to 60, then get out. The tunnel door is behind the compactor. The code is Euro0. It's broken." He started wheeling me. I heard voices once. Troy asked, "Have you seen her?" A gruff voice said, "No." The cart moved on. It stopped. I counted to 60 and pushed the bags aside. I was in a dark room with a big compactor. I saw the rusted door. I punched the. Nothing happened. I pushed, and it creaked open. I took a step into the dark tunnel. A hand clamped on my shoulder. "Going somewhere?" It was Vance. He stepped from behind the compactor, a small pistol in his hand. "The maintenance man has been very talkative," he said coldly. "Mr. Finn must have broken." Vance gestured with the gun. "The incinerator is this way. Let's not waste the fuel." The gun pressed into my back. Vance marched me to a heavy door marked Incinerator Access. The roar of flames was loud. I couldn't go through that door. Fighting might get me shot, but that was better than fire. He had to open the furnace door to put me in. That would be my moment. The room was bright and hot. I saw the main furnace door with its orange window. A control panel blinked. "Open it," Vance ordered, gun steady. I shuffled forward, playing feeble. I reached for the hot handle and yelped. "Use your sleeve." He snapped, stepping closer. As he leaned toward the panel, I swung my elbow back into his gut. He gasped. I grabbed his wrist, forcing the gun up. We struggled. The gun went off, the bullet sparking off the furnace. The shot stunned us. I headbutted him, connecting with his nose. He cried out, blood spurting. The gun clattered down. I dove for it, but he kicked it under a conveyor belt. He came at me, hands reaching for my throat. I backed up. He lunged. I sidestepped. He stumbled past me toward the incinerator door. His hand caught the release lever. With a hiss, the heavy door began to open. Blistering heat poured out. Vance screamed. I ran to the control panel and slapped buttons. A siren whooped. The conveyor belt jerked to life, moving toward the furnace. Vance was between the belt and the flames. "Shut it off!" he screamed. I didn't. I ran for the gun under the belt. I crawled, heat scorching my back. My fingers closed on the metal. I rolled out, aiming at Vance. "Step away!" I yelled. He froze, then raised his hands. The conveyor pushed waste toward him. He stepped sideways toward me, his look changing from fear to calculation. "You'll never make it out," he said. "The police are in my pocket. Your son will testify you're insane." I kept the gun level. "Then I have nothing to lose. The ledger. The USB. Where?" He smiled, blood on his teeth. "Safe. In a deposit box. Key is in my office. You'll never get it." A waste bundle tipped into the furnace, exploding into flame. In that second, he charged. I fired. The shot hit his leg. He went down howling. I turned and fled into the tunnel. The tunnel was pitch black. I ran blind, hand on the wall. Shouts faded behind me. I saw a sliver of grey light, a metal grate. I pushed it open and emerged into a drainage ditch at dawn. The perimeter fence was ahead. Beyond it, woods. I was out. But I was in my hospital gown, barefoot, with a stolen gun. I had no evidence, no allies, and a wounded villain who would hunt me. I crouched in the ditch, shivering. Birds began to sing. Freedom was cold and desperate. I had escaped the incinerator, but the real fight was just beginning. The cold mud of the ditch seeped into my bones. Birdsong meant dawn, but no warmth came. I was barefoot in a thin gown, clutching a gun I didn't want. Silverhaven's fence stood behind me. Ahead, woods. I had to move. They would send searchers once they found Vance wounded. I needed to find shelter and call someone I could trust. But who? My son was compromised. The police might be bought. I thought of my sister, Clara, in Ohio. We hadn't spoken in years, but blood is blood. I needed a phone. Moving through the woods was agony. Twigs and stones cut my feet. I kept the gun tucked away. After a while, I reached a road. A sign said, Millerton, 5 miles. I knew that town. Henry and I used to stop there for pie. It was a risk, but I needed clothes and a phone. I hobbled along the road's edge, hiding when cars passed. An old pickup slowed. The driver, a man in flannel, rolled down his window. "You all right, Mom?" He saw my gown. I forced a smile. "My son's car broke down. I'm walking for help." It was weak, but he bought it. "Hop in. I'm headed into Millerton." Trusting him was dangerous. If he was connected to Silverhaven, I was dead. But I had no choice. I got in. His name was Ed. He talked about his farm. I nodded, shivering. He saw my bloody feet. "Lord, you're hurt." He drove straight to a small clinic on the town's edge. "My niece works here. She'll fix you up." A clinic meant records, questions. But before I could protest, we arrived. Ed helped me out. The door chimed. A young woman in scrubs appeared. "Uncle Ed? Who's this?" "Found her on the road. Needs patching up." The niece, Sarah, took my arm and led me to an exam room. Sarah sat me down. "Let's see those feet." As she cleaned the cuts, she whispered, "I know where you came from. The news is on the radio. Silverhaven reported an escape. They said you're violent, mentally ill." She looked at me. "I don't believe it. My grandpa died there last year. His savings vanished." She bandaged my feet and gave me old sweatpants and a sweater from a lost and found box. "There's a back door. Go. The police chief is Vance's brother-in-law." An ally appeared where I least expected. She gave me $5 and a prepaid phone from her purse. "It's got one charge. Use it and toss it." I changed, my hands trembling. "Thank you," I said. She nodded. "Get him." I slipped out the back into an alley. I had clothes, a phone, and a warning. But as I turned the corner, I saw Ed talking to a man in a uniform by his truck. The man pointed toward the clinic. Ed shook his head, but the officer started walking toward the building. My new sanctuary was already compromised. I ducked behind a dumpster, feeling the prepaid phone in my pocket. The officer went into the clinic. I had only minutes before Sarah might break. I had to call someone and vanish. Clara was too far away. I needed local help, someone with authority but beyond Vance's reach. I remembered Frank Miller, a retired state investigator Henry knew from Korea. Henry had saved his life. Frank owed us, and he was honest. I turned on the phone and dialed information for Frank's number. My cold fingers struggled. It rang. A gruff voice said, "Miller?" I said, "Frank, it's Eleanor Vandermeer, Henry's wife." There was a pause. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" "I'm in serious trouble in Silverhaven. They want me dead." I have proof of fraud and murder. I need help. Another pause. Where are you? Millerton. The local police are corrupt. Can you get to the old train depot on the West End? I'm an hour away. I'll meet you. Stay hidden. I hung up and smashed the phone. The depot was a mile off. I began walking through back alleys. My bandaged feet hurt terribly. I just had to last until Frank came, but my energy was nearly gone. Near the depot, a silver car pulled onto the street ahead. It was Vance's car. I recognized the plate from the file. A younger man was driving, looking around. They were hunting for me. I slipped into a gap between buildings. They were getting close. I reached the crumbling brick depot and hid behind some pallets. The wait was awful. Every noise made me jump. Where was Frank? A sound behind me. I turned, reaching for the gun. It was only a stray dog. But the movement caught the driver's eye. He had circled back. He saw me, stopped the car, and got out, talking into a radio. I ran inside through a broken door. It was dark and dusty. He followed. I crouched behind a rusty machine. His flashlight beam cut the gloom. "Come out, Grandma. Vance just wants to talk." His voice echoed. I stayed quiet. He came closer. I needed a distraction. I threw a brick across the room. It clattered. He turned, and I rushed from behind, swinging a piece of pipe. It hit his shoulder. He yelled, dropping the radio. We fought. He was stronger. He pinned me to the wall, his hands on my throat. I couldn't breathe. Then, headlights lit the windows. A car screeched outside. His grip loosened. I kneed him hard. He stumbled back. I ran for the door. Frank stood there, tall and grey, holding a pistol. "Let her go," he ordered. The man raised his hands. Frank disarmed him and cuffed him to a pipe. "Eleanor, you're a sight," he said. I leaned on him, gasping. "We need to go," he said. "That radio will have alerted others." He helped me to his car. I saw the silver car's driver watching us, his face angry. He mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then he pulled a small device from his jacket and pressed a button. A loud alarm blared from the depot, shattering the morning quiet. In the distance, sirens began to wail. He'd triggered a panic alarm, calling every officer in town. Frank pushed me into his car and sped off. Sirens wailed behind us. "State police are with me, but locals are tricky," he said, weaving down back roads. "Tell me everything." I told him all, from finding the key to the incinerator. Frank listened grimly. "Vance has connections. We need solid proof. Is the deposit box key in his office?" "Yes, and probably the ledger and USB too." "We must get it before he moves it. First, let's secure you." He drove to a remote woods cabin. "Mine," he said. "No one knows it." Inside, he gave me food and shoes, a relief for my feet. "I have a clean contact in the state attorney's office, but we need evidence today before Vance covers his tracks." We had to get the key from Vance's office, back into the lion's den. I was tired, but determined. "I know the layout. I can get in." Frank shook his head. "Not alone. I'll create a diversion for you to sneak in, but if caught, I can't legally protect you." We made a plan. Frank would fake a tip about a fugitive at the quarry to draw police away. I'd enter Silver Haven through the laundry tunnel. The office was on first floor. Midday, Vance might be at the hospital. Time was short. We had to move fast. Frank gave me a flashlight and lockpicks. "From my old kit. Can you use them?" I nodded, recalling Henry's lessons. We took separate cars near Silver Haven. Frank went to call. I waited, saw 2 police cars speed to the quarry. His diversion worked. I slipped through the woods to the drainage ditch. The tunnel grate was open. I climbed in with my flashlight. The dark, damp tunnel led to the empty compactor room. I took the stairs to first floor. The hallway was quiet. Lunch hour. I heard distant tray clatters. I reached Vance's office, locked. I picked the lock steady-handed. It clicked open. Inside, I checked the hollow book. Empty. Vance had moved the key. I searched the desk, found nothing. Then, a crooked photo on the wall. I lifted it to find a hidden safe dial. No combination. Time was tight. Voices in the hall. I ducked behind the desk. Lena and Dr. Evans entered. Evans said, "Transfer contents now. Vance wants it done before state investigators come." Lena replied, "Combinations in the system. I need your keycard." Evans gave her a card. "Hurry. I'll watch the hall." Lena typed on the computer, read a number, dialed the safe. It opened. She took out a metal box with keys and a USB drive, the evidence. As she turned, I stood with Frank's gun. "Lena, drop it." She gasped, dropping the box. Evans rushed in. I aimed. "Stop." He froze. I grabbed the box. "Game over." Then the window shattered. A canister rolled in, spewing tear gas smoke. I couldn't see. Evans coughed and ran. Lena grabbed my arm. "This way." She pulled me into a private bathroom, locked the door. Through smoke, men shouted, Vance's pained, raging voice. "Find her. She's in here." He was here with reinforcements. The bathroom was small and windowless. Lena turned on the fan, but smoke crept under the door. We crouched by the toilet, breathing through wet towels. I clutched the metal box. "Why help me?" I whispered. "Because I'm tired of being scared," she said, eyes red. "My sister died last night. They called it natural causes, but it was a morphine overdose. Vance did it because I helped you. I want him gone." We were trapped. Vance's men would break in soon. "We need a way out," I said. Lena pointed up. "Access panel to the attic crawl space. You can drop into a storage closet near the kitchen." "Come with me," I urged. She shook her head. "I'll distract them. Give you time. When I open the door, run for the panel." Pounding started on the door. "Open up. We have the building surrounded." It was Troy. Lena looked at me. "Go. Expose them." She flushed the toilet, then unlocked the door and stepped out. "She went out the window," she shouted. "Hurry!" I heard confusion and running footsteps. I pushed the panel up and hoisted myself into the dark, dusty crawl space. I crawled. Below, I heard Vance yell, "The window is barred. Find her." I found the drop point and lowered myself into a closet. I cracked the door. The kitchen was empty. I slipped to a delivery entrance. The door was propped open. Outside, the loading dock was empty, but 2 guards were at the main gate. I remembered the incinerator room had an exterior vent. I went back inside, through the basement. The room door was ajar. I dragged a table over, climbed up, and kicked out the vent grating. I squeezed through and dropped to the ground behind the building. I was out, but not safe. I heard dogs barking. I ran into the woods, the box heavy in my hands. I needed to reach Frank. Our rendezvous point was a roadside marker 2 miles east. I ran until my lungs burned. The dogs grew closer. I waded through a creek to throw off the scent. On the other side, I climbed a ridge and saw the marker. No car. My heart sank. Then Frank emerged from the trees, waving me over. He had hidden the car. "Got your message," he said. "Let's go." We drove away, but a black SUV pulled out behind us, matching our speed. "Company?" Frank said. He accelerated, but it kept pace. On a winding mountain road, it rammed our bumper. The car swerved. I held the box. Frank gripped the wheel. "Hold on!" He turned sharply onto a gravel road. The SUV followed, kicking up dust. We were heading toward a cliff overlook. Frank braked hard. We skidded to a stop feet from the edge. The SUV stopped behind us, blocking retreat. 4 armed men got out. Vance wasn't there. Their leader, a grim man in a suit, approached. "Hand over the box, and we let you live." Frank reached for his gun, but a rifle was raised. We were outnumbered and cornered. The cliff drop was sheer. There was no way out. The armed men had us trapped against the cliff. Their leader demanded the box again. Frank's hand was near his gun, but we were outnumbered. I held the metal box, knowing it held the key to Vance's downfall. To give it up meant my death anyway. I decided to try something. I opened the box slowly. Inside was a USB drive, a small key, and papers. I quickly palmed the drive and the key, slipping them into my sleeve. Then I stood, holding the now empty box. "Take it," I said. As the leader stepped forward to grab it, I threw the box high over his head toward the cliff. He and his men turned to watch it. In that instant, Frank drew his pistol and fired 2 shots into the air. "Down!" he yelled, shoving me behind the car. The shots caused confusion. The men ducked, then aimed at us. We were pinned. The leader smiled. "Stupid move." He nodded for his men to advance. Then we heard it. The whoomp-whoomp of a helicopter. A state police helicopter rose over the ridge, its spotlight blinding. A loudspeaker boomed. "State police, drop your weapons and lie down." The men froze. Frank had timed the backup call from the cabin perfectly. The leader dropped his gun. His men did too. Police cars roared up the road, officers swarming out. A detective came over. "Frank Miller, you have evidence?" I handed him the USB and key from my sleeve. "Everything is in a deposit box at First Mercantile Bank. The details are on the drive. Vance is the ringleader. He's at Silver Haven, wounded." The detective said they had units moving on Silver Haven and would need our statements. I felt exhausted. It seemed over. Later, at the station, a young officer brought a tablet. "Mum, you should see this from the drive." It was security footage from Silver Haven. It showed my son David not just signing papers, but actively negotiating with Vance. David's voice was clear. "The Marine pension is all hers. How do we make it look like she gifted it to me?" Vance replied, "We have a lawyer. Your cut is 40%. David smiled. "Make it 50. The video showed David handing Vance an envelope of cash. My cash from the house sale. He wasn't a pawn. He was a willing partner, bargaining for a bigger share of my life. The truth was a knife in my heart. I'd suspected his weakness, but not this greed. This victory cost me my last shred of family. I sat in the cold room, the video playing in my mind. Frank put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Eleanor." I just nodded. The police said Vance was in custody, and David would be arrested soon. Justice was coming, but it tasted like ashes. As I was released into Frank's care, I asked for one thing. "Before they take him, I want to see David, alone." The detective arranged a supervised visit for the next morning. I didn't know what I would say, but I had to look him in the eye one last time to see if anything of the boy I raised remained. The hard truth waited for me in that room. The visitation room was cold and smelled of bleach. David sat across from me, hands cuffed to the table. A guard stood by the door. My son looked older, his face drawn and pale. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I sat down, my joints aching from the ordeal. I needed to look at the man he had become and let him see me, not as a feeble old woman, but as the mother he betrayed. I didn't speak first. Let him squirm. The silence stretched. Finally, he mumbled, "Mum? I'm sorry." It was hollow. I leaned forward. "Sorry for what, David? For selling my house? For trying to have me declared insane? Or for bargaining with Vance for 50% of my pension?" His head jerked up, eyes wide. He hadn't known about the video. "I saw it all," I said, my voice steady. "You counting cash. You smiling." I paid the last image of my little boy was gone, replaced by this stranger. He looked down, then his face hardened. "You don't understand. I was in deep with loans. The business was failing. Vance offered a way out." He said it like it justified everything. The pressure built in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shake him, but I stayed still. "You had a choice," I whispered. "You chose to bury me alive." He shrugged, a cruel gesture. "You were old. You would have died soon anyway. This way I could have something." His words were ice. I felt something inside me break forever. There was no remorse here, only entitlement. Everything shifted when he glanced at the guard, then back at me, lowering his voice. "But I can help you now. Vance has a partner, someone higher up. I know who it is. If you get the charges against me reduced, I'll testify." He was bargaining again, even now, using information as currency. I stared at him. "Who?" He smiled, a thin, nasty smile. "The state senator. He owns the land Silver Haven is on. He gets a cut of every asset recovery. Vance was just the manager. You take down the senator, you clear the whole system." He leaned back, looking pleased with himself. "So, do we have a deal?" I stood up, my chair scraping loud in the quiet room. The guard shifted. I looked at my son, at this man who saw me only as a transaction. "No deal, David," I said. "You'll testify because it's the right thing to do, or you'll rot. I don't negotiate with traitors." I turned to leave. His voice chased me, desperate now. "Mum, you need me. You can't prove it without me." I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind me. In the hallway, Frank was waiting. "Well?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "We have a bigger target, a state senator, but David won't help willingly." Frank nodded. "Then we find another way. But first, we secure your life back." As we walked out, my mind was already moving. David had given me a name, but his betrayal was complete. The hard truth was that my son was lost, and I had a senator to bring down. Frank drove me to a safe but sterile temporary apartment arranged by the state attorney's office. First, I needed to reclaim my identity, bank accounts, and dignity. The legal process was slow. Vance was in jail, but Senator Robert Harlow was a powerful man. Proving his involvement without David's help would be tough. I spent the day on the phone with lawyers and investigators. It drained me. Frank helped using his contacts. We learned Harlow had a shell company funneling money from Silver Haven. Then a reporter called, asking for my side. Frank warned me it might be a trap to discredit me. I decided to take control. I agreed to one interview with a reporter Frank trusted. I laid out the facts. The forced conservatorship, the theft, the video. I didn't mention Harlow by name yet. Afterwards, I visited the bank with my deposit box key. The box held Vance's master records, spreadsheets of stolen assets. Harlow's name was on several transfers. It was the proof we needed. But as I left, a black sedan followed me. I drove straight to the police station, and it sped away. They were watching. That evening, Frank came over with bad news. Harlow's lawyers are filing motions to block the evidence. The case could be tied up in court for years. We needed something undeniable. I remembered Lena, the aide. I called her. She was scared, but agreed to help. She told me, "There's a secret server in Vance's office. It backs up everything. The password is his daughter's birthday. I can get you in tonight. It was a huge risk. Breaking in again could ruin everything, but it might be our only chance. Frank insisted on coming. We planned for midnight. The building was dark. We used the laundry tunnel again. Inside, the halls were empty. We reached Vance's locked office, but Lena had given me a key card. We slipped in. The server was in a closet. I typed the password. Files downloaded onto Frank's drive. Then we heard footsteps. The door handle turned. It was Troy, the orderly, with a flashlight. "You!" he growled. He lunged at us. Frank stepped forward, but Troy was bigger. They struggled. I grabbed a heavy paperweight and hit Troy's head. He went down, stunned. The download finished. We ran. As we reached the tunnel, alarms blared. We scrambled out and drove away. Back at the apartment, we checked the drive. It had everything. Emails between Vance and Harlow, financial trails, records from other facilities. It was a gold mine. But as we celebrated, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. A smooth voice said, "Eleanor Vandermeer, you have something of mine? Let's talk. Or your sister Clara in Ohio might have an accident." The caller ID showed a DC area code. Harlow had national connections. The game had just gotten much bigger, and now my family was in danger. The threat to Clara settled in my gut like a stone. I hadn't spoken to her in 10 years, but she was still my little sister. Frank saw my face. "Harlow?" I nodded. "He's upping the ante." Now I needed to protect people, not just get justice. I called Clara immediately. She was surprised to hear from me. I didn't sugarcoat it. "Clara, listen. I'm in trouble, and it might spill over to you. Can you go stay with your daughter for a few days? Don't tell anyone where." She asked questions, but I cut her off. "Please, just trust me." She agreed, worried. With Clara safe for the moment, I focused on Harlow. We had the evidence, but we needed to use it wisely. Frank contacted his friend in the FBI. The case was now federal. Wire fraud, racketeering, elder abuse. The tension was immense. Every hour felt like a countdown. I decided to send Harlow a message. I mailed a copy of the most damning email to his home address, with a note, "I have the rest. Back off, or it goes public tomorrow." It was a bluff, but it might buy time. The next day, the FBI moved in. They arrested Harlow at his office. The news channels showed him being led away in handcuffs. It was a victory, but it felt distant. My part was done. The evidence would speak for itself. In the weeks that followed, the legal process unfolded. Vance pleaded guilty, implicating others. David, facing overwhelming evidence, took a plea deal for a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony. I didn't attend his sentencing. Some breaks can't be mended. I moved back into my house. It felt empty. Echoes of Henry everywhere. The bank restored my accounts, but the Marine pension was gone, spent by David. It didn't matter. I had enough. One quiet afternoon, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. Frank stopped by to check on me. "You did good, Eleanor," he said. "You took down a corrupt system." I smiled, but the price weighed on me. I had lost my son, not to death, but to greed. That hole would never fill. After Frank left, I went inside. I took down the family photos from the hall, packing them away. I kept one, a picture of Henry and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful. I placed it on the mantel. I called Clara. We talked for an hour, laughing about old times. We made plans for her to visit. It was a start. A quiet understanding came to me slowly. I planted flowers in the garden, something Henry loved. I joined a volunteer group for elder rights, using my experience to help others. The revenge was complete, but the peace was something I had to build day by day. The house was quiet, but it was mine again. And in that silence, I found a strength I didn't know I had, a resilience that no one could ever take away. The future was mine to shape, one small, steady step at a time.